See how he does against Marine Lord. As we're going to hop in for some more high view action. But no more of this Roos. Bored. Why would, like, oh, who cares? Roos, overrated. Make me go sleepy, bye-bye time. This looks a lot funner. We're going to actually get to see some Abbasids versus English on high view. And I think this is quite an interesting detail because traditionally I would say that the Abbasids are just kind of like running the English through right now. But I actually think the view variants, haha, because high view, the vision variants, right? The scouting difference, like these type of elements on a map like this can actually really kind of evolve a matchup. Especially if you start thinking about a reliance on siege later on and the likelihood that an English player will probably get outposts up first. Like that vision discrepancy could actually give an edge over to the English. I actually think the English is a pretty decent sieve for high view. It's just kind of underrated because of the more powerful ones like the Roos right now. The whole logic is that you can kind of build up these walls, you can build up these outpost networks, you can crawl them with the trebuchets and slowly end the game. Now, the reason why you're not seeing much of the English on this map is because that's kind of the go-to strategy. I don't really feel like the English are an all-in feudal civ for high view, and that poses a problem because right now the majority of games are being decided in feudal age. And I think that's why we're not seeing them here. If you actually think back to like the previous patch, the previous meta when Imperial Age, English was a fairly common pick on high view. We just kind of got unfamiliar with it because in the Road to Warlord, we've had a bunch of custom maps, a lot of prioritization around things like Dry Arabia and Lipany in Best of Freeze, to a point where high view wasn't really on the table. Speaking of things on the table, berries are, of course, going to be on the table to open this up for Blade. Getting the superior gathering rates is going to be important to quickly boosting himself up into Feudal and Past. And what I'm intrigued to see is whether we're going to get a 2 or 3 TC build. TC expansions seem likely here. Probably on both sides as well. Marine Lord is definitely a player that has historically enjoyed the 2 TC build from the English. And I actually think he's been experimenting with it more and more in the last week or two. Although in limited amounts, because, of course, this guy has been too busy getting his ass kicked in multiverses. Sorry, Marine Lord. But all I'm saying is there's a reason why you're not streaming that gameplay. Maybe he is, and I haven't noticed. I don't think he has, though. You know, I bet he's an Iron Giant spammer as well. Ugh. I'm going to stop saying words that make no sense to AoE 4 degenerates. Instead, we're going to focus on the degeneracy here. As the tech up has been saved up for House of Wisdom now going up. Not necessarily optimal out of Blade here. You can see he's actually floating additional than he requires. Kind of feels like one of those awkward situations where you almost want to pull more villages to race forward, but if you do, you're just going to sacrifice more eco down the line. I think that's why he only went for a second villager. Any more than that, and you feel like you're just sacrificing too much eco for it to be worth the quicker tech up timing into fresh foodstuffs 10 or 20 seconds faster. So, tech up will begin. Meanwhile, for Marine Lord, there it is. It is going to be the 2 TC build we were talking about. Pulls onto the stone, gathering the last of the food for the tech up. And there's going to be a delayed tech up. Like, you're going to see him actually build this up with 2 or 1 villager max. Because, like, the issue he has no wood, he has no stone. He has plenty of time to start gathering. Yeah, it will be 1 commit. He might change it to 2 or possibly 3 villagers if he gets the required surplus, but it's going to be a while off on that. You can see that he requires wood for the mining camp first, which sets him back another 50. Needs to get up to 400 on that. And you are talking about a civ where you've only got 4 or 5 people working wood right now, and you don't actually get any eco gains. Like, you're not gaining more. You don't have a gather rate increase like the Abbasids get at 10 buildings connected. You don't have an extra 20% drop off like the Roos. It's just very static, slow pace. I think it's why, actually, the way forward in a lot of matchups right now for the English does feel like it's going to be going for this secondary TC, simply because you just don't really have any other upsides. And before anyone goes, Longbow's amazing, attack speed, woo! Okay, so you just named 2 things that require more wood than other civs. Outposts, of course, require 100 wood every time, and each longbow is, well, not wood, it's going to require more food. But the point is it requires more of a resource that you don't get more of. Not until later anyway. Not until you farm transition, which you don't really do that fast anymore. In fact, I've noticed more and more English players trying to play pocket ecos to prolong their reliance on static resources with good gathering rates and thus delay the wood investment to get them across that milestone into farms. Not sure we're going to see it in this game, though. I think in this game, Marine Lord won't play Deer Stack, just because there's a risk that the Abbasid player will push into Horsemen or Archers. And also, in this type of game, with like the condensed formation, like you might just drop a TC near the gold and stone vein, and then build all your farms behind. For the time being, we were right. He didn't have enough people on the wood, as you're seeing. We'll switch over now. Feels like he's going to drop the TC close to the wood line. We might actually see him drop it on the Deer Stack. If he goes Deer, he will just delay that farm timing longer. And I got to say, there's a lot of value in this Deer play. You've got double Deer next with the berries. I actually think you can get a quick castle without a single farm. And this could put Blade behind by about 45 seconds to a minute in terms of his tech up timing. Here we go, Villager Pool. Yeah, I think you have to go for this. Like, this is too high value to pass up. Like, it's double Deer and berries. Okay, he's going to sell for 1 Deer Stack. Wait. Okay, he does see it. This is something I've noticed with a lot of players, actually, to try and fully optimize, like, the gathering times. They choose to go for the single Deer Stack in the center as opposed to between two. The logic, of course, is that you're initially going to get better gathering rates, and afterwards, you can just move a mill here, right? I do kind of understand the logic here, because otherwise, you know, as you play further away from the TC, not only are you losing efficiency in terms of drop-off time, on top of that, you got to consider the risk that you've got villages further out from safety, up against a Civ that is going to probably build archers and cavalry on a map where you can't see them coming until it's too late. Speaking of things I could see coming, Blade is going for that second TC. It's going to be 4 TC. Typical choice here. When you're presented with a berry patch or a Deer Stack on the other side of the wood line, you're seeing it from both players. You actually want to go to the other side of that natural tree line you start with. What it does is it secures the tree line indefinitely, so you get the whole thing without much harassment. And then you create a natural bridge point between. As you free up this territory by chopping down those trees, you can now build things safely in this area, knowing that they should be protected. Blade will need to get some protection out. Noticing this, he actually hasn't built any military buildings whatsoever, which means 1 or 2 longbowmen could prove pretty frustrating here. However, positioning is a pain in the ass as Marine Lord is learning quickly. Can't seem to stay out of TC range. We'll just start to weave around under the berry patch and will force a reaction. Stables is now going to be built up. Meanwhile, back at home, Marine Lord now beginning that farm transition, a cheap one. We said he'd try and delay the timing. Interesting, he doesn't delay it more. But I think the logic here is he doesn't believe in a fast castle end. Sometimes you'll see people just prevent the farm constructions to rely on deers to get a quick castle timing. And then they'll try to do irreparable damage with 3 or 4 knights. I actually prefer the build Marine Lord went for in this game because that concept of doing irreparable damage doesn't really work that well against the Abbasids. You know they're going to go multiple TCs. You know that their villages only cost half price. So the eco hit to them is much lower. It means that you're actually better served by getting a 1-up in your eco long-term via farms versus trying to chip away at their eco situation by going early on to the knights. Blade. Seems like he's not happy to stop at 2 TCs. We'll head towards the 3rd. Marine Lord likely to save up now. I expect him to just try and get towards Castle because with Castle Age, you will get the King's Palace and thus your 3rd TC. Should keep you neck and neck. Of course, the counter flip side here is, you know, at the end of the day, the Blade, he's paying 1.5 TCs worth in terms of villager cost for 3 TCs worth of production via the fresh foodstuffs. But the argument the other way is you're already seeing Marine Lord get a 20% gathering rate. When he arrives in Castle, it's going to be 25%. That kind of offsets the loss long-term via the fact that you're going to have a superior 10% extra gathering rate to what the Abbasids have. In the short term, in like up to the 20 minutes, it's actually better for the Abbasids simply because, you know, you can talk about this 10% gathering on each farm being great, but you're paying 37 wood to enter for each one. And then at the end of the day, you know, a 10% increase in gathering rate really doesn't compare to the extra 25 food you're paying. Where it really does matter is once you're like pop capped. Once you both have the amount of villagers you're looking for in a game, that's where it's a good advantage because it's just each villager being more efficient than the Abbasids. Of course, as we go into hyper late, you know, we do start talking about things like agriculture as well as improved processing. But the flip side argument is always the English do get their hands on the enclosures, which makes them quite a lethal force in the Imperial Age. Chill state right now. Looks like this is going to be an eco booming game. You don't really get this too often. Usually there's someone kind of dictating pace with feudal. Instead, it's just going to be castle up, castle up. And look at the way that Marino's going to play this. I thought he might play north side with his King's Palace just to try and cover that angle, but instead he's going for a wide spread so he doesn't feel boxed in. Quite like this play, actually. Naturally, he should be able to control the north side with a wall or two. Maybe even a keep gets dropped here because he needs upgrades eventually. And there's plenty of wood in reserve. That was another reason I was expecting him to play up here. But instead, he wants to guard his flank. In the meantime, also getting inflated rates via the deer. You see tech up now underway for Blade. We talked about the delay that he'd be suffering from, and we're seeing that come into the picture. Marine already halfway up with his tech up. Should be about 1 minute and 15 seconds ahead of Blade. And although Blade has, got the free TCs, we can see he actually is still lagging behind Marine Lord. It looks like Blade may have missed villager production once or twice. It could be that Marine Lord sniped out 1 or 2 of the Lombos in the end, but I feel like it's more likely he just didn't have enough food to keep it going. Especially when he's forced to make that horseman transition quite early. Tech up complete. Marine Lord, this is where we choose the stables, and there it is. Stables going to go down into the Knights play. Just wants to try and pile on the pressure. Knights is just such a high value unit on this map. You are up against the Abbasids, and I think this is where you can get an advantage as Blade, is naturally your opponent is going to build Knights here. It just makes so much sense to the English. So just get a Camel Archer out, get some Spearmen to buffer him, and you can defend. But the reason why Marine Lord still goes for this, despite the fact he should end up countered, is in the short term, you're talking about an open map with limited vision, right? Open map, closed vision. You can't easily see the angles of approach, and at this stage, Blade clearly hasn't walled himself in. It means the economy can be sniped. And that's why Marine Lord is going to play into a double stables build. I don't expect him to invest more than this. I would expect him to sidestep eventually into racks and archery range type units. But for the time being, his opening and castle makes a lot of sense. We'll start to see this outpost go up. This is something we highlighted, by the way, is that we'd expect the English player to play for vision in the forest quicker. But credit to Blade. I like that he done this. This is very important. He gets the outpost up near the sacred site because TCs don't give vision. Sorry, I should say that a different way. TCs do give vision. Chill, chill. Yeah, you can see around your TC. You can't see in the stealth forest, though. If it wasn't for this outpost, Blade would see nothing here right now. He could be raided. This prevents raids on his Ford Berry Patch line, and also gives him early warnings about night raids on the flanks. Speaking of those night raids, Marine Lord did sneak one in, but Blade is mirroring the choice here. Lancer versus Knight. A fight that Marine Lord will lose if he doesn't have forward outposts, and right now, his outposts are nowhere near the base of Blade. For the time being, instead, it looks like he's playing for midfield action control just to get his hands on those relics. Relics that I'd love to see Blade play into, and yes! There it is! Abbasid players have gotten so good at doing this. The build order has changed, and they've started to make room for the mosque. It makes sense. You know, you're a Civ that loves the late game. You want to get to that late game. But when you get to that late game, you want to make sure your opponent is in bad shape. And one way to do that, one way to ensure that, is by going for these relics that a lot of Civs will rely upon for late game scalability. Nice pull there, by the way. Blade just used the villagers to body block so that Marine Lord couldn't run away. Means that he doesn't get that much value out of his first night. So many Knights they are here to guard. Someone asking if there's a big difference between Lancers and Knights. One looks cooler than the other. I'll let you choose which one you think looks cooler. There is no difference between Knights and Lancers, other than the name and appearance. I'm a Stronghold fan, so I'm clearly going to be a bigger fan of Knights. But some people really like those dangling Lancers with their circular shields. Yeah, there's no baseline difference. The only time you get differences is when you're talking like Lancers to the Delhi with the home blades, or you're talking about like Knights to the English playing with attack speed aura. In kind of like a nutshell, they are the same. Same with like Roost Knights until they get Boys Fortitude, and Knight Sabers, they're the same as other Knights. The only Knight that doesn't start equal to everyone else is the French Knight. And that the French Knight by default has a damage buff that it gets when it charges, which is complete BS. Nerfless. You can already hear it being yelled in my chat. Lord. Getting a decent amount of knights out, and he's used them well so far to try and get some relics, but Blade hasn't been sleeping on this either. You can see he's just trying to sneak out for his safe ones, but nice sneak around by Marine Lord, however, spotted a little bit too early. At the end of the day, though, this should be a free relic split in favor of Marine Lord. You can see the final one is back here safely behind the natural tree line, so not a bad state for Marine Lord to find himself in, especially as I see if that in the hyper late game is going to get ridiculous amount of gold income anyway via the farms.
What needeth be undone? What needeth be undone?
Saddled upper and ready.
Calm a moment. Marine Lord just trying to keep Blade on the defensive. You can see actually right now he's trying to carve up more of the map, and Blade is going a little bit turtly. Maybe a little bit too turtly here. I feel like he has numbers, and he should know he has numbers as well. He's seen Marine Lord throw away a few knights for little in return. So you should feel confident about taking the fight towards Marine Lord's base. But right now, overly defensive. That's giving Marine Lord time to wall himself in, to get the spears up, and be ready when his opponent arrives. And this is where I think Blade was worried about, like this detail here. He's playing into blind territory, and it's going to be static emplacements that threaten him in conjunction with spears. I actually like the peel back. Once again, this outpost is MVP right now. Blade, if he didn't have this outpost, if he dove in there, if he gave pursuit, I think all those lancers go down to an ambush from the spears. I'm a bit perplexed by this choice, though. The Rams over the Mangonel is not making much sense. Knights, in the meantime, going on the villagers is going to push him back. Spears aren't going to be answered by the crossbows. So Marine Lord not confident about taking a fight right now, but he's prepping the new line of troops. The upgrade for the Man-at-Arms is coming through. Expect to transition in the next minute. Man-at-Arms might not be the one, though. I think you need some Lombos in here. Could be worthwhile. If you're just going to spam Man-at-Arms, you're doing so against a unit that already counters you. Yeah, I definitely think Blade is playing overly defensive. I'd love to see him play a bit more pocket eco. We see him now up on the deer. But I'd love to see him taking these more risky gold deposits further out, while all attention is drawn to the south side. Just simply so that he has reserves later on. Like, you can see he's got a fat stack in his base, but like long term, this is going to run out. If you think about the burden on him, he's building siege, he's building crossbows, he's building lancers. This is one of the most expensive compositions you can build as the Abbasids, and it's going to dry him up fast. At which point, he's going to desperately play into the midfield, and that's where Marine Lord can exploit him. Because Marine Lord right now is not playing a gold-heavy lineup. In fact, if you look, it's no gold anymore. He stopped pushing knights. It's just horsemen and spears now, for good reason. That answers everything that Blade has and gives him surplus to think about a tech up at the same time. You can see that surplus in action. Wraparound horseman looking to go onto the Mangonels. Mangonel's going to be caught out here. Spearman taking a little bit of a tickling. But Mangonel's going to take more than that. Gap closed upon. Spears going to hit into the Lancers. They're forced to stand their ground, but the attack speed buff is going to be there. Marine Lord will push back against this, and Blade, forced to retreat, has to take the premium Lancers away, sacrifices the siege, sacrifice half of the crossbow line as well. And it looks like a decent fight here for Blade, but he needs to do more with this. The Ram does get rid of the outpost, which means that there's no way Marine Lord can fight back. However, with this siege gone, and plenty more cheap units coming out, Marine Lord still can easily stabilize here. Might want to think about getting ranged units out there. You can see how Blade has sidestepped now into the archers as well as the crossbows. This is the problem. Right now, if you're Marine Lord, you do not have ranged battalions available to you. He is going to go for a different type of range. Those siege workshops being stockpiled up. In the meantime, a clash coming out again. 14 horsemen go in. None will come home. But the price that we paid on both sides will be high. The starter step comes back from the crossbows. Spearman quickly given pursuit. No attack speed buffer is there for Marine Lord, but he's quickly pinching through these lancers. Remember, they were heavily injured in the first engagement. Means that Blade is going to be pushed back, and now they're neck and neck in the military department. However, the big difference is the price that Blade is paying is double in both fronts here, or almost both fronts. We're talking horsemen compared to lancers, that's double. Then we're talking spears compared to crossbows, that's 1.5. It leaves a lot of extra room for Marine Lord, and you're seeing that room now. Look at the income, and look at the surplus. They should be somewhat competing, yet they're not, because Marine Lord has been cheapskating it. Horsemen and spears, both these units build quicker, they move faster, and they cost less. He understands this meta very well. He understands how he can win this, and I think that Blade got sucked into the whirlpool that was Lancer production. He should have cut that off a while ago. In fact, he should have went for Spearman. He's the Abbasids here. And it sounds weird to say he should have built Spearman against the English, but it's an English player that is yet to build another longbow. He's built about 2 all game long and we're 20 minutes in. If he'd gone for this Spearman, Blade would have the advantage. You can talk about this attack speed buffer all you want, but the Abbasids with the Phalanx can have double the troops attacking. Instead, the only attack coming is on him. Body blocks come in. Village is cut off in the middle of the transition. It looks like Blade had the same idea we were just talking about, but gets caught in the middle of it. Village is going to be sniped down. Escalation is going to be slowed. Idle Eco is going to be forced. Marine Lord with a throwaway force because he draws Blade's military forces to his own base and covers his tech up. Blade, likely aware of what's happening here, gets beaten to the punchline for the second time this game. As Marine Lord will make his way up first and now will instantly look to start spamming out the Wingard armies.
What needest thou of me?
In the meantime, still having a few horsemen on the backside is going to be frustrating. It means that Blade still has to clean up troops here. Scout around will also discover the pocket eco on the deer line. Just little frustrations like this matter, because right now Blade is trailing the eco department. These horsemen are still idling your military force when you should be pushing in. Missed opportunity. Frustration now for Blade. However, he has now arrived in Imperial himself. He has done so with a decent economy, as you always do as the Abbasids. Remember, you click the buttons, but then for almost 2 minutes, instead of using villages to build up, well, they're building a resource bank. That's why it's very difficult to actually punish Abbasids for teching up, unless you spot them doing it at the beginning of the timer. And of course, on a map like Highview, with the way that Blade's been posturing, Marine Lord didn't have that opportunity. Opportunity should be taken right here is Marine Lord getting a little bit ambitious. Double Mangonel could ambush though, Blade. It goes onto his spears. That's lucky for him as well. The crossbows could have easily been wiped out. It's going to be a backup for the time being from Marine Lord, showing a lot of respect over to Blade here. Should start fighting him soon though. There's not that many spearmen on the front side. You have got the Mangonels to counter out the back line of Blade, so this is going to push him back. Buys a little bit of time, and with that time, we can already see it's going to be a bunch of Wingard armies building up. He definitely wants those trebuchets still. No interest in the Raiders or the Rangers. This feels like this change was cool, but no one cared. It's always still going to be the Wingard army, and for good reason. It just saves you so much more resource. I think that that's the thing that was kind of overlooked here by the developers, is that if we do the maths on this, like the Knight should somewhat compare, right? You're saving, so 360, 240. You're saving around like, I want to say 700 to 800 resources. However, the Wingard army, I think the Trebuchet still puts it in favor of bigger savings there. Like, that's the problem I think that exists here. Even the hand cannons idea with the crossbows, like, it just, the Wingard army just feels 10 times better. Especially considering the hyper late game comp is going to be Trebuchets anyway. And these units usually cost 750 resources, yet you're getting them plus bonus units for 400 resources. Right now, it's not about the Trebuchets, it's about those Mangonels that are proving a frustration. Blade trying to push in. Splash coming out. Marine Lord does need to get a keep up if he wants to get his hands on the goodies. The attack speed buffer is not there. It's just a 25% buffer, 20% in fact. Wraparound coming in. Horseman on the backside, straight onto the Springholds. Going to snipe them down, going off the Mangonels afterwards. The reaction comes out with the spears, but that's too late. That's going to bolt the fight. That's going to break it here. Blade forced to retreat. Great maneuver there by Marine Lord. Sacrifices the small quantity of horsemen, snipes out all the siege, and now with superior numbers will push Blade back. Blade continue to crawl forward with a new military district on the front line. The issue for Blade is he hasn't escalated yet. It's still just Golden Age 2. If he can crack Golden Age 3 and afford the push of troops that comes with that extra 20% production, that's when the game gets uncomfortable for Marine Lord. But in the meantime, every minute you delay is another minute of trebuchets added. And these trebuchets will become important because if you look at what's happening on both sides, they're creating choke points via their buildings. These choke points are easily holdable for melee units and easily exploitable for shattering projectiles as the game goes on. This is very crafted by Marine Lord. It's kind of like you're standing in, you're running into a minefield here, is what's happening for Blade. Like, unless you can reach with Springholds, which is difficult against a 16 tile range unit anyway, you're in trouble. And because your opponent has been amassing spearmen non-stop the entire game, Blade is less inclined to go into horsemen and thus doesn't actually have a good counter to trebuchets. See Raids on the flank. Blade once again suffering as he's forced to guard in the center. Trying to rebuild to pop cap, but number advantage still with Marine Lord as he starts to push forward. Horseman hesitant for the moment. More outposts being built up in the meantime. Trebuchets to take out the vision that Blade has in the area. And limited Spearmen here. Way too many archers. Once again, the Horsemen make their way in. Onto the Springolds. Easily sniping them down. The trades once again looking good for Marine Lord. Yes, the Abbasids have the phalanx, but the attack speed aura is once again there for M-Lord. And the cannon emplacement's coming out soon as well. It's another thing that Blade has to worry about. Another thing that he has to transition for, because this man has not built trebuchets. He's going to need him. You can see that Blade knows where this wraparound is coming with the outpost, but not much he can do about it. In fact, if he doesn't snipe down this outpost quickly, he's going to have problems. Torches are going to start being hurled onto the outpost on the side. Villagers are going to retreat away, which should draw Blade's attention. And that would be a mistake. I think Blade needs to take out this outpost now. If he chases the villagers, this is going to be a strong point for Marine Lord around the Sacred Site. Speaking of strong point to contend. New wave of horsemen coming in. Cannon placement is finally going to be there for Blade. Not enough spears, though. I just don't think the production rates are there right now. Blade just seems to be one step ahead. It's the same 1-2 punch from Marine Lord, and yet he can never recover. And now every push-in gets more lethal. Marine Lord now up to 5 trebuchets, and he's breaching your production lines. If you were struggling to keep pace with what Marine Lord is pushing before, you do not stand a chance now. The outpost crawl around continues. I mean, this is a full encapsulation. Blade has limited resources, limited gold to access. Stone, he's gathered it, but he can't get a keep down easily. I mean, it's 5 trebuchets. I think the keep opportunity is missing now. Blade has wasted time getting 1,000 stone, and it doesn't serve a purpose anymore. If he tries to build a keep at all in this game, it's just going to throw away 800 resources straight away. That's the power of the trebuchets of the English. That attack speed buffer is absurd. And by the way, that attack speed buffer has been inflated now. He did go back for a keep. He did get the increase. We are now dealing with network of citadels here. Network of citadels, that's really where you begin to shine, especially with this composition. Marine Lord now pushing in with the man-at-arms. He sees the transition. Blade gets tricked once more. He goes archers. Marine Lord instant reacts to the man-at-arms, and once again, Blade lacks the answer, and this time will lack the production rates to counter. The cannon placement still on answer. I mean, the trebuchet, if this trebuchet goes down, you're done, because you don't have a way of getting back out of your base. And he knows it. Gets surrounded. Cheap units non-stop. Then a switch into trebuchets and man-at-arms proves way too strong here out of Marine Lord. Just feels like he was one step ahead. Brilliantly played. Gives him the win. Blade will have to go back to that drawing board.